Brilliance Audio presents If You See Her by Ania Ahlborn. Performed by Brian Holden. By the time Jesse realized where they were heading, it was too late to object. He had been absorbed in his new Nokia 3310, long coveted and so fresh out of its box that it still had that new plastic smell. It was a luxury he'd spent months saving up to buy, a damn fine high school graduation present, if he did say so himself, and quite frankly, he was obsessed with it, which was why, lounging in the back seat of Casey's beat-up Honda Civic, he hadn't been paying attention to the conversation being had between his two closest friends. But now, glancing up from his game of Snake 2, he knew where they were. It was pitch dark out there, but that made no difference. There was no mistaking the area, and the butterflies that had been slumbering in the pit of his stomach exploded into a frenzy of undulating wings. With his phone clenched tight in his right hand, he forced himself to lean forward, positioning himself between the two front seats. M&M was cranked to nearly full volume. He wasn't sure how it was possible, but it was exponentially louder in the front two seats than in the back. Reed was obsessed with this damn CD, and while the songs were getting tiresome, it wasn't hard to understand Reed's infatuation. Sure, Michigan had its share of breakout stars, Alice Cooper, Stevie Wonder, Madonna, Al Green, but none hit as close to home as the no-holds-barred rapping white kid with 8 Mile roots. The guy had come out of nowhere and from nothing. It wasn't tough to imagine that dead-end existence had been had in Warsaw rather than Detroit. Casey was driving over the limit, his head bobbing in time to every bass beat, the ruts in the road threatening to shake that shitty Civic to pieces. Not that it mattered. Casey had a habit of trying to destroy his ride for God only knew what reason, taking it out to empty fields, doing donuts at full speed. Reed, who was sitting in the passenger seat, was rapping along with the music. He'd burst into laughter every now and again, stumbling over the lyrics despite knowing them by heart. The trio had heard every song on the Slim Shady EP about 100,000 times, but it didn't make the lyrics any easier to master, and it didn't lessen Reed Lowell's infatuation with the man himself. But that was Reed for you. A little obsessive, a little over the top. Jesse's best friend since elementary school. "Hey," Jesse said, reaching between Casey and Reed to turn the music down. He was trying to keep from sounding too concerned, too chicken shit. But he had to say something, because this was a field trip he hadn't signed up for. What the hell are we doing out here? Jesse's cohorts glanced at each other. A moment later, they were cracking up at their oblivious backseat passenger. Reed twisted in his seat and peered back at him. Casey's upgraded stereo, the only upgrade that car would ever get, illuminated the contours of his face in a pale and ghostly glow. His mouth twisted up into his signature grin. It was the kind of smile that made you feel simultaneously stupid and too amused to care. "Dude, are you drunk?" Reed asked. Casey fell into a fit of poorly suppressed laughter. It was true, the car did smell like a mixture of booze and Cool Ranch Doritos, and from the tinkle of glass that sounded every time Casey hit a particularly jarring pothole, there were plenty of empties rolling around beneath the seats. But Jesse was far from drunk. Yes, he'd had a couple of beers before the trio had crawled into Casey's car for a late-night drive. But both Casey and Reed had imbibed way more than he had. Not that that mattered either.